If you're a business owner or an entrepreneur and your business is in debt, then these are the 5 steps you must take to get your business out of debt as quickly as possible. My name's Jeremy Jacobs. I'm an entrepreneur of 18 years and I've built a 7-figure business. And I've been there myself, and I know plenty of other people who have. And if you follow these 5 steps, this will give you your best chance of getting out of debt as quickly as possible. So a quick disclaimer before we get started. Everything I'm about to share with you is based on my own personal experience, and it did work for me and it will work for you, but it shouldn't replace seeking professional financial advice. And the reason for that is because your situation, your business, your circumstances are very unique. So I just want to say before we get started, it comes with a disclaimer. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm an experienced entrepreneur who's been through this myself. Please always go and get professional advice before you take any action. So now the disclaimer to cover my ass legally is out of the way. I wanted to talk about my own personal experience, and then we'll get into the 5 steps that I took to get my business out of debt. So about 4 or 5 years into my business, I hadn't been spending enough time or giving enough attention to my business finances. And one day my accountant sat me down and said, "You're in £150,000 worth of debt." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I didn't realize. And I very quickly had to go to work on understanding my finances and work to get my business out of debt. The short story is within 12 months, we were out of £150,000 worth of debt, and we actually had 150 grand in the bank. So everything I'm about to share with you are the 5 steps that I took to go from 150K's worth of debt to £150,000 in the bank in 12 months. And it was hard work, I'm not going to lie. But if you follow the 5 steps that I'm about to share, then this will help you get out of debt as quickly as possible. Now, the first thing I want to say about is talking about your mental health. It isn't a step necessarily, but it's really important to start off with. Me as an entrepreneur and as a business coach and mentor, people's mental health is really important to me, and it is to myself, because I went through a really, really tough journey many times in my business, and I didn't pay enough attention to my mental health, and I wish I had. And so when you're approaching dealing with debt in your business, the first thing that you need to look at is your own mental health and the way you're talking to yourself, the way you see yourself, and the feelings you have around it, because the chances are there's going to be guilt and shame and a sense of feeling a failure, and list whatever negative feelings and thoughts you have around all of it. You probably are feeling that. You can't take these 5 steps if you're in that place. When you're in that place, your brain goes into survival mode. You may not realize it's in survival mode, but when you're in survival mode, and there's plenty of research out there that shows that this is the case, your executive function, your prefrontal cortex, the bit that helps you make decisions and rationalize everything and act like an adult, disconnects. So when you're in survival mode, it's really difficult to take action, and it's really difficult to see the wood from the trees, to see the way out. So I'm hoping if you are someone that is in that place and is watching this video, that this will provide some comfort. It is absolutely possible for you to get yourself out of the situation, and you really do need to go to work on your mental health. However you need to do that. For me, it was talking to friends, family, business professionals, my accountant, anyone that I could share openly and honestly with, and know that I wasn't going to get judged, because that's the worst place to be. Trust me, to get yourself out of this place is feeling judged by yourself or other people. And I'm here to tell you now, I don't judge you. I judged myself at the time, but I have way more compassion and understanding for myself than I did back then. So before we get started on what those 5 steps are to get your business out of debt as quickly as possible, I just want to provide some context. And that is the distinction between good and bad debt. Now, I'm not a big fan of referring to them as good and bad, because it gives an impression of morality and judgment, which is the last thing we need. But I haven't yet come up with an alternative phrase. So if you've got one, leave it in the comments or let me know, and I'll take that forwards into the future. But for now, we'll refer to it as good and bad debt. Good debt is where you are either adding value to your business, where it's boosting income. It tends to have a lower risk and a lower interest rate, and it actually contributes to the growth of your business. That might be investment in assets, equipment to maybe speed up production. You might have to borrow some money for short-term cash flow. So what that is let's say, for example, you've got a new client. So when we had the food manufacturing business and we won, for example, a client like British Airways, we didn't have the cash available to be able to buy all the ingredients, hire the staff and pay them, because often these companies won't give you, or would rather pay their invoices maybe 30, 60 or 90 days later. So you've got to plug that gap. Debt or income, or sorry, rather loans, is something that you can use to do that. And that was what we would refer to as good debt, because it's actually contributing to the growth of your business. Bad debt is debt that is not contributing to the growth of your business. It tends to have no return on investment, high interest rates, and the biggest one for me is really around non-essential purchases, which we'll cover a little bit later on in one of the steps. But that is where you're buying stuff that you don't need or your business doesn't need. Classic example of that is getting the new shiny iPhone or a brand new computer. Do you really need it? Probably not, unless it's broken or really not working and hindering your production or your productivity rather, and actually getting your work done. But I've seen this so many times in myself where I've had to catch it, but also in my clients and other people where they go and buy this new computer because they really need it because it's going to help them. It's not the case. Knowing the difference between your wants and your needs is really, really important when it comes to finances. And it's a skill that you have to learn. I had to learn the hard way. So let's have a look at the 5 steps of how to get your business out of debt as quickly as possible. Now, I did ponder whether or not to put this step in at number 1, in the middle, or at the end. And I've gone with number 1 because I think it's actually the most important step to take. We've already touched on it a couple of times, and that is to seek professional help. Whether that's your accountant, whether it's a financial advisor or a business coach or a mentor, getting help from someone who knows what they're talking about is really, really important. If you don't have an accountant in your business, go get an accountant. An accountant is there to help you manage your finances, work out what tax you've got to pay, and actually help you to pay less tax and to make your business more financially efficient. So I've never, ever, ever looked at the money I pay out for accountant and thought that's a waste of money, because it's a really sound investment and you really should have one. Now, they are going to be the people that can help you the best, and their job is to help you manage your finances. So if you are in a position of debt and your accountant isn't aware, then you need to speak to them. So there's a good reason why accountants may not actually know that you're in debt, because you might be thinking, well, hold on a minute, if they're accountants, shouldn't they know? Often you'll only have an agreement with an accountant where they'll look at your businesses on an annual basis. When I had my business, they would look at it more frequently. So we did pick up on that, but that was after I realized that I was in that level of debt. And so they're not necessarily going to know straight away. They're only looking at certain types of financial reports, and only once a year. So chances are it's not that they're going to pick up on it. So please don't give them a hard time if you look at your accounts and you realize you're in debt, and then you think, well, that's their responsibility. It's actually not their responsibility. It's your responsibility. You're the business owner. And so it's your responsibility. So go and speak to an accountant, get one if you haven't. You can also speak to a business coach or a mentor or another business owner that you trust, or start off with speaking to friends and family. The reason I say that is because sometimes there is a lot of shame and guilt around being in debt. And so speaking to someone that you really trust and you know won't judge you, it's a good starting point. But essentially, you will need to go and speak to an accountant at some point. So step number 2 of how to get your business out of debt as quickly as possible is understanding your finances and where you're at. Now, I'm going to take an educated guess that the chances are if you are in debt, then some of these things you may not have in place. And there's no judgment about that. But as I said earlier, take action as soon as possible to get these things in place. There are 3 financial reports that you can look at within your business: your financial statement or your balance sheet, your profit and loss or income statement, and then your cash flow forecast. If you have an accountant and you have cloud-based software such as Xero or QuickBooks, then the chances are you'll already have 2 of these in place, which is your balance sheet and your profit and loss statement. You may or may not be looking at those already. No judgment if you're not. Your balance sheet is something which I tend to look at with my accountant. Your most important one, other than your cash flow, is your profit and loss or income statement. And that shows you how much money you are losing or making in a month. The most important one out of those 3 is your cash flow forecast. If you don't have one in place, drop me a DM and I can send you a template with a video of how it explains how it all works free of charge to help you set one up. But what your cash flow forecast does is it tells you over time how much money is coming in and out of your business by month and the impact that has on your bank balance. And what that will tell you over time is when your business will run out of money. That is one of the hardest things that I had to set up when I was in this position because I didn't have one when I was in debt. But when I did it, at first, it was a bit shocking, but it was the basis for what I would use to help me understand where my money was going and what was coming in and coming out, and then how quickly I was going to run out of money and what I could do to actually make a difference and start taking action, because that is definitely one of the most important steps. Understand where you're at, and then you can start to take action, which leads me very nicely into step 3 of how to get your business out of debt as quickly as possible. And that is about cutting back. The fastest way to have more money is to spend less. It's not necessarily the most fun way, but if your business is in debt and you need to get out of it as quickly as possible, then this is a very critical step. Cutting back. That is the first thing I did, and I always do on a regular basis, probably at least 4 times a year, quarterly, or sometimes monthly, is to go through my profit and loss statement and my cash flow forecast and look at what I'm spending and really, really analyze that and stress test it and think to yourself, do I need to be spending this money? Coming back to that, do I know the difference between my needs and my wants? Do you need it or do you want it? Because if you don't need it, you don't need to be spending money on it. And you can transform your financial position and your cash flow very, very quickly by starting to cut stuff out. Always start with software, subscriptions, anything else, admin-y, things that you don't necessarily need or you could live without before you start looking at cutting staff back if you've got a team or you have suppliers, because obviously those people are helping you to run your business. And of course, we don't want to be running around firing people unnecessarily. So don't take any action too quickly. Think it all through, create a scenario with another copy of your cash flow forecast, create a copy, go through it, play around with the numbers and see what it does to your numbers, because that step is all about reducing the amount of outgoings in your business so that the income coming in stays in as long as possible and gives you the best possible amount of time that you can continue to run your business for. So step 4 in how to get your business out of debt as quickly as possible is to increase revenue. Now, I know you're going to be rolling your eyes at me and saying, Jeremy, that's the most obvious answer. That's what we're doing already. But I want to talk about it because I want you to be honest with yourself about, are you doing everything that you can? I've been there myself, and I know that lots of other people do the same. We tend to gravitate towards the tasks that are most fun and easiest for us to do, and we enjoy the most. And for most people in business, sales and business development is the least fun and the thing they enjoy the least. So, how much time are you spending on income generating tasks? And looking at your week and making sure that you're spending as much time as possible, 80%. 75%, 70%, anything more than 50 or 60% of your time in this situation, probably most of the time, to be honest, but certainly in this situation of getting yourself out of debt, is to make sure you're focusing your time and your energy on income generating tasks and not getting sidetracked about doing other stuff that you think is important but actually isn't. Number 5 of getting your business out of debt as quickly as possible is about consolidating and restructuring your debt. And this is all about having conversations with the people that you owe money to see whether or not you can stretch out the amount of time that you're paying them back, or you can reduce the amount of interest. So it's all about reducing the amount of financial burden you have each month on your cash flow to extend the life of your business, essentially. Some of these are going to be banks and financial institutions that are going to have set rules, and they're going to be more difficult to negotiate with, but they should have policies or agreements in place in these circumstances. So it's always worth having a conversation. I will say, again, make sure you go and get professional financial advice if you're going to do any of this, because I'm not a financial expert. I'm not trained to do it. This is just my own experience. So make sure you do that. And then it's about speaking to your suppliers and your creditors, the people that you owe money to see whether or not they would be happy to support you in maybe renegotiating your payment terms, stretching that money that you owe them over a longer period of time. As long as you can convince them and make them understand this is a short-term fix and you've got plans in place, you don't have to give them all your financial information, but you do want to give them confidence that this is a short-term problem that you're working on and that you would like their support. I've had to do that a number of times in the past, even when we're not in a particularly bad financial position, but we've just needed to make sure that we can stretch our cash flow out a bit longer. But you do need to pick up that phone and have those conversations, because again, that's a really quick way that you can get your cash flow extended, take the pressure off as much as possible. So those have been the 5 steps in how to get your business out of debt as quickly as possible. The 5 steps to get your business out of debt as quickly as possible are: seek professional help from your accountant and people who know what they're talking about and are trained to do it. Know where you're at in terms of your finances. So get clear on your finances and your financial position, looking at your profit and loss statement and your cash flow forecast. Cut back as much as possible and be honest with yourself about the difference between what you need in your business and what you want in your business. That is going to be the fastest way to get yourself out of debt and start freeing up the money in your business. Number 4 is to increase your revenue, which I know eye roll is probably one of the most obvious answers, but be honest with yourself about, are you actually spending as much time as you need to be on income generating tasks and not spending your time avoiding that and doing things which aren't actually going to help your business to grow and get yourself out of debt? And step 5 is about restructuring and consolidating your debt and having a conversation with the people that you owe money to and getting some time and some help in making sure that you extend your cash flow and your business can continue to run as long as possible. So I hope these have been helpful. Remember, don't judge yourself. It's not going to help you. Action is the key, and good luck with it.